Hi everybody, Jennifer Schaus here. We're coming to you live today from Washington, D.C., and thanks for joining us in our weekly webinar series. We're covering the DFARS, the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement. The series runs on Wednesdays and Fridays at 12 noon Eastern. They are absolutely free and recorded. You can find all of the recordings over on our YouTube channel. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe or download or listen to any videos there. We've got over 750 videos in the library covering everything from the FAR, the DFARS, FAR supplements, as well as strategic and tactical topics in government contracting. If you're looking for the PowerPoints, hop over to slideshare.net, log in with your LinkedIn credentials, and you'll find the PowerPoints there. In the event that somebody sent you a registration link today, or you were clicked on it through an outward-facing calendar, you're looking to sign up for future DFARS webinars, hop over to our website, click on the section called DFARS. On the left-hand side, you will notice that we actually covered this topic back in 2021. Those regulations have probably gone through some changes and updates and are currently evolving present day. So just make sure if you listen to anything that you know those are historical recordings. On the right-hand side, if you see any links to YouTube, it just means we've already completed that DFARS part, and anything that has a registration link, you can sign up for it. A little bit about us. We are based in downtown DC. We've got over 20 years of experience with a primary focus on helping companies get onto the GSA and VA schedules, as well as other contract vehicles. Speaking of other contract vehicles and GSA, we want to draw your attention to the executive order that came out on March 20th, more or less making GSA, at least on paper, the procurement hub. So if your company is interested in getting onto the GSA schedule, needs help with audits, renewals, price list uploads, anything along those lines, modifications, drop us a line to the hello@jenniferschaus.com, and we'll gladly set up an exploratory call to make sure it's in your best interest. In the event that your company is selling to federal contractors, we've got some advertising options and sponsor options in our newsletter, the webinar series. You can put on your own webinar. We have an event coming up on June 23rd. This is a kind of a short list of who we have confirmation from on both the sponsor side as well as the government side. Tickets are required in advance, no tickets at the door. Click on the link below to register, or you go to our website, click on the section called events, and the registration link is there. If you want to advertise with us, here's just a screenshot of what our subscription looks like now. Our newsletter is absolutely free. We've got over 38,000 subscribers, most of which are government contractors, and hovering around the 29% open rate. Okay, for today's series and the entire series this year, we want to thank our in-kind sponsors. GovEvents, that's the premier platform for posting events related to government and government contracting. You can find all of our events and webinars posted on govevents.com. Fairfax County Economic Development Authority has an online calendar for posting events and webinars. Again, you can find all of our events and webinars over on the Fairfax County EDA calendar. We also want to thank Tom Johnson over at Set Aside Alert. That is the go-to publication for finding opportunities for small women-owned, veteran-owned, hub-zone, and 8A firms. Visit setasidalert.com for more information. We also want to thank the Virginia Apex Accelerator. They're a trusted resource and DLA-funded organization. That's Defense Logistics Agency. They provide the Apex Accelerator provides local training, counseling, and mentoring for aspiring government contractors, as well as matchmaking events. If you want to sell to state, local, or federal government, please contact your local Apex Accelerator. You can visit the links there on your screen to get access to the training calendar and schedule an appointment with a counselor. Okay, now we want to thank our paid sponsors, which is what really allows this series to be brought to you absolutely free. The BidSpeed platform, and our friends at BidSpeed will be at our event on June 23rd. But the BidSpeed platform allows users to search public sector opportunities at the federal, state, and local level. Users can also find anything from a compliance matrix to teaming partners, incumbent point of contacts, expiring contracts, and proposal templates. Discover, manage, and secure government contracts with BidSpeed. BidSpeed is an official partner of the SBA's ETG Empower to Grow program. Contact BidSpeed today. Okay, sorry about that. I think I clicked on the links to contact BidSpeed. C3, if you're thinking about contracting with the DoD, You need to prepare for CMMC. That's the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. C3 suite of CMMC solutions include C3 Command, C3 Catalyst, and C3 Core. These 3 solutions answer the needs of every defense contractor. Whether your CMMC priority is a fast defined path to compliance, or you need the flexibility to manage multiple environments, C3 offers solutions. They're your partner with a deep expertise in IT, cybersecurity, and compliance. Contact C3 today. WorkPlan. WorkPlan is an online contract management and accounting tool designed for federal contractors and hosted by AWS, Amazon Web Services. Get and stay DCAA compliant, manage your expenses, timekeeping, and forecasting, plus use the WorkPlan platform to manage your capture process and your CRM. Contractors can integrate their HR and payroll into this one easy-to-use solution. Contact WorkPlan today. Ateria. Ateria specializes in Microsoft Cloud licenses and services for government and contractors. They provide a business advantage for Microsoft Government Cloud licensing, manage IT administration and security, as well as data intelligence services and solutions. They implement secure, compliant, and scalable solutions to enhance operations, reduce risk, and uncover opportunities. Contact Ateria for expert IT assistance. Okay, last but not least, we want to thank Gov White Papers. Gov White Papers is the central hub for government and government contractors to find and post content geared towards solving public sector challenges. With your free membership, you can add relevant white papers, case studies, data sheets, and more, making your content available to a wider government audience. Have the expertise, but not the content? Gov White Papers can also create materials to meet your specific needs. Join for free today at govwhitepapers.com, and you've got a point of contact there as well. Okay, we are here today to talk about the DFARS Part 226 with Sandy Levy. Sandy, thank you so much for joining us. And I just see a typo here already on this slide that should say 206. So sorry for that. We'll make sure that we fix that before we get the slides out. But I will stop talking, put myself on mute, and turn the floor over to you.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Hi, everybody. Welcome. So glad you're joining us today to talk about DFARS Part 226, the other socioeconomic programs. I'm Sandy Levy. I work for an organization called WestEd. I'm their Vice President of Contracts, Grants, and Procurement. And WestEd is a nonpartisan research development and service agency that works to promote excellence, improve learning, and increase opportunity for children, youth, and adults. Next slide, please. So today's agenda, we're going to dig into DFARS Part 226. I've prepared a slide to show you how that compares to FAR Part 26. It aligns in some areas and it's completely different in others, but we'll get into that. And in part of Part 226, we have the Indian Incentive Program, which is also in FAR Part 26, the Drug-Free Workplace section, preference for local and small businesses, demonstration projects for contracts employing persons with disabilities. And then I've added a little slide at the end of this to just briefly talk with you all about the impact of the DEI executive orders on small business programs. I've been curious about whether those are going to impact the small business programs, and I've been talking with some industry experts. So I will mention that at the end of this presentation, what I have found out. All right, so the purposes of DFARS Part 226, it implements and supplements the FAR with specific socioeconomic programs and policies for the Department of Defense and their respective programs. DFARS Part 226 makes sure that the Defense Department meets its acquisition needs and goals, supporting various socioeconomic goals to include promoting a drug-free workplace, supporting local and small businesses, and promoting employing individuals with disabilities. Next slide. Okay, so here you can see there's a comparison from DFARS 226 to FAR Part 2026, and this was helpful for me, and hopefully it's helpful for you. And as I was designing this particular presentation, you know, like, what are the differences here? And as you can see right off the bat, both FAR and DFARS includes the Indian Incentive Program, which we will get into a bit more in subsequent slides. DFARS has a few sections that have been reserved, and some sections are, you know, just not even used here. So that is what you're seeing on the left side is really what you would find if you go out to acquisition.gov and look up DFARS 226. But you can see that in the FAR Part 26, a major disaster of emergency assistance activities and HBCU and minority institutions are covered. That's not covered in the defense side of the food donations to nonprofits, and encouraging contractor policies to ban text messaging while driving. That's also not included in the DFARS 226, although I do believe that the DFARS does cover in a separate section the encouraging contractors policies to ban text messaging while driving. And then on the DFARS side, you've got the drug-free workplace, as I mentioned, the preference for local and small businesses, and then the encouragement, the demonstration project for contractors employing persons with disabilities essentially is a encouragement and guidelines of hiring individuals with disabilities. Next slide. Okay, so the Indian Incentive Program. So the procedure here, there's different sections within the Indian Incentive Program, and here with the procedures, it talks about what steps need to be taken if, say, you're a contractor and you've partnered with a Native American business, and the types of incentive that you can get as a contractor, as maybe a large business that you've partnered with a small business that's Native American, what that procedure is, how you can claim your percentage, and I believe it's 5%, for utilizing that business, and the process where to send the claims and so on and so forth is here. Next slide. So the contract clause essentially says, you know, it encourages using this clause when utilizing an Indian organization, Indian-owned economic enterprise, and Native Hawaiian small business concern in solicitations and contracts, including solicitations and contracts using FAR Part 12, the procedures for the acquisition of commercial products and commercial services that are for supplies or services exceeding $500,000 in value. Next slide. Okay, so the next subsection or the next section within DFARS 226 is the drug-free workplace, and this clause, as it says, as its title, it's pretty self-explanatory, but essentially it's the government that's encouraging, if not mandating, that contractors do their due diligence in ensuring that their workplaces are drug-free. It's especially necessary and required in all solicitations and contracts that involve access to classified information, or when the contracting officer determines that the clause is necessary for reasons of national security or for the purpose of protecting the health or safety of those using or affected by the product of or the performance of the contract. This clause is not necessarily used in contracts and solicitations for commercial products and commercial services, when performance or partial performance will be outside of the United States or OCONUS and its outlying areas, unless the contracting officer determines that it needs to be included at the best interest of the government or for the best interest of the government. And then when the value of the acquisition is or at below the SAT, the simplified acquisition threshold, then this clause may not necessarily need to be used. Next slide, please. All right. So this subsection of DFARS 226, preference for local and small business, it's a pretty long one. but it's really it's an encouragement for the Department of Defense and contractors working with the Department of Defense to utilize local and small businesses associated with certain activities within DoD. And as you can see, there's a scope of the subpart, there's a definition associated which talks to vicinity, we'll get into in a minute. The policy behind this, procedures in executing under this clause, and then some other considerations. Next slide. Okay, so the scope of the subpart, essentially it implements section 2912 of the fiscal year 1994 Defense Authorization Act and section 817 of the fiscal year 1995 Defense Authorization Act. And I've provided the publication references there for you if you like to look that up. So the one definition that's in this subpart 22671 is vicinity, and it essentially talks to, or it means that, you know, businesses that are within the county or counties in which a military installation is to be closed or realigned. What those of you who may be in the DoD space understand as BRAC. So, so in that area, if there's a military base that's going to be closed or realigned, then there's a need and a push to use small businesses within that vicinity, unless it's otherwise defined by the agency head. And the policy behind that is that businesses located in the vicinity of a military installation that's being closed or realigned under base closure law, and small disadvantaged businesses are to be provided the maximum practicable opportunity to participate in acquisitions that support the closure or realignment, and that's including acquisitions for environmental restoration and mitigation. So essentially, the government is encouraging its agencies to utilize these local small businesses in the help of the BRAC process. Next slide. So here's the procedure behind the preference for a local and small business. In consideration for awards through the Section 8A program of the Small Business Administration's 8A program, or in making a set-aside decision under subpart 2019.5 and the equals FAR subpart 19.5 for acquisitions and support of base closures or realignment, the contracting officers, and this also applies to contractors who might be issuing subcontracts, the contracting officer must determine whether there is a reasonable expectation that offers will be received from responsible business concerns located in that vicinity of a military installation that's going to be closed down or realigned. If the offers cannot be expected from business concerns in the vicinity, then the contractor can go outside of the vicinity. They can proceed with Section 8A or set aside considerations as otherwise indicated in Part 219 or FAR Part 19. If the offers can be expected from a business concerned within the vicinity, however, then the contracting officer is encouraged to consider Section 8A only if at least one eligible 8A contractor is located in the vicinity. So it just takes one, essentially, to comply with this particular clause. And then set aside the acquisition for small business only if at least one of the expected officers is from a small business located in the vicinity. So say, for example, there's a BRAC closure, a BRAC happening, or a military installation closure happening in that vicinity, and the contractor or the government can't find enough subcontract support or contractor support within that vicinity. If they just find one, then they can go out and utilize small businesses outside the vicinity, but they're encouraged to at least find one contractor that can support that effort. Next slide. Okay, and some other considerations, the last part of this particular DFARS clause. So when planning for contracts for services related to base closure activities at a military installation affected by a closure or realignment, contracting officers must consider as a factor in source selection the extent to which offers specifically identify and commit in their proposals to a plan to hire residents of the vicinity of the military that is being closed or realigned. Again, this is another consideration where the government is encouraging the agencies to look for contractors who can then hire residents of that local vicinity, because essentially what this is saying is that in military installations there are both civilians that work on military installations as well as our men and women of service, and the encouragement here is to ensure that, or at least attempt to ensure that residents can then continue to be employed during that process, because they know that we're closing down military installations, there's going to be a loss of work in that area, and they're trying to minimize the impact of that activity as best as possible. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this subpart, section 226.72, the demonstration project for contractors employing persons with disabilities. This whole section is really an encouragement by the government to employ individuals or have contractors employ individuals that have disabilities in performing their contracts. So as you can see in the scope of subpart, the subpart implements Section 853 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2004. Nothing in this subpart, however, supersedes the requirement to use mandatory sources in federal and the FAR Part 8 or the Small Business Program in FAR Part 19. And essentially the definitions of this, they talk about an eligible contractor, which means a business entity operated for-profit or a nonprofit basis that employs severely disabled individuals at a rate that averages not less than 33% of their workforce, so essentially a third of their workforce over a 12-month period prior to issuing the solicitation. That the eligible contractor pays not less than the minimum wage prescribed pursuant to 29 USC 206 to the employees who are severely disabled individuals, and that provides for its employees health insurance and a retirement plan comparable to those provided for employees by business entities of similar size in its industrial sector or geographic region. And then a severely disabled individual means an individual with a disability who has a severe physical or mental impairment that seriously limits one or more functional capacity. Next slide. And I know this is a lot of words. There's a lot of words in this particular section in and of itself, but I'll break it down a bit for you and let you guys read it at another time. But the policies and procedures under subpart 226.72, contracting officers may use this section to award one or more contracts to an eligible contractor for the purposes of providing defense contracting opportunities for entities that employ severely disabled individuals. Again, this is the encouragement of the government to have their contractors as well as themselves hire individuals with disabilities. And if a contractor elects to use this section, and there's a FAR equal there, so FAR 63025 requires a written justification and approval to limit competition to eligible contractors. Essentially, if they perhaps might do a sole source contract with any other type of contract award for a sole source, justification is required. And in that justification, they have to identify the statutory authority for the demonstration project. And then when using this section, one of the evaluating factors needs to be the percentage of the offer's total work workforce that consists of severely disabled individuals employed by the offeror. So, i.e., that third referenced in the prior slide is ideal. And contracting officers may use a rating method in which a higher percentage of the total workforce consisting of severely disabled individuals could be used, would result in a higher rating for this evaluation factor. So what this means essentially is that they come across a contractor that, say, employs 50% or 60% of their workforce are disabled individuals, then they might get a higher score in the evaluation of the proposal. And then contracts awarded to eligible contractors under this section is counted towards DoD's small disadvantaged business goal. And the contractor must be an eligible contractor when options under the contract are exercised. So as many of you know, listening in, if you're working in the contract space, we get the government contract space will get a 5-year contract, for example, that's a base year and then 4 option years after that. That means in this case, the eligible contractor still has to be eligible for this type of award in out years in order for the DoD to continue to receive credit for that contract award towards its small disadvantaged business. It doesn't mean that the government might take the contract away necessarily. Certainly if it's a IDIQ with competitive task orders, that could be the case, but if it's just already an award and you have the base year and the out years, you still perform under that. Of course, you would have to notify the government. That would be wise, that a change in your business status has occurred, and certainly under updating your SAM record accordingly. But essentially, the Department of Defense won't get credit if that changes the structure of this award. And then contracting officers shall verify the contractor representation by checking SAM. Like I said, you still have to update your SAM if any changes occur, and certainly notifying the contracting officer is wise. Prior to exercising an option on the contract awarded under this section, and contracting officers may exercise the option if the contractor has represented it's no longer eligible, that the contractor should no longer be counted towards the small disadvantaged business goal, but that doesn't necessarily mean your contract would end. Next slide. Okay, and here's the solicitation provision under subpart 22672. The DFARS states to use this provision at the noted DFARS reference, representation for a demonstration project for contractors, employee, persons with disabilities, and solicitations when using this section, and including solicitations using FAR Part 12 procedures for the acquisition of commercial products and commercial services. And I have a link there for you folks who want to reference that through when you look at the slides later. Next slide. All right, this is my final slide, and I hopefully it's useful and helpful to folks, but the conversations are continuing around what the impacts of the EOs are on the small business program. So I've given you a link to the executive order itself, removing the DEIA preferences, and in March of this year, SBA issued a press release, and there's a link to it, implementing DOGE's initiatives and is reducing its workforce by 43%, essentially saying ending the expensive social policy agenda of the prior administration, eliminating non-essential roles, and returning to pre-pandemic staffing levels as of February of this year. SBA did post their small business goals across the various agencies, and there's been some changes, not substantial, but some. But it's worth it for those who have small business reporting requirements and small business plans. It's worth keeping an eye on this, and I'm sure you are. But if you haven't, or you haven't had a chance to look, there's a link right there in the slide deck when you get them that you can, bookmark on your browser and just keep an eye on it. But essentially, here's the differences that I saw. So from fiscal year 23 to now, to fiscal year 25, the small business goals have varied a little bit. Notably, there's been an increase in goal percentage for disabled veteran-owned businesses from a 3% to a 5%. And like I say, while there's no definitive guidance from SBA is out there on what changes are to be expected, some of the industry experts I've spoken with, and especially through associations like NCMA, some of these industry experts believe that this goal percentage for the SDVOB classification will substantially increase, while other categories will either remain the same, be reduced, or be eliminated altogether. So more to come on this particular subject, but I wanted to cover this to at least let you know what I've, have researched and discovered thus far. And I'll be happy to take questions about this or anything else on the slide deck, or if you've learned anything that you'd like to reach out and let me know, that would be great as well. So that's the end of the presentation. So thank you everybody for joining.
Awesome. Great presentation, Sandy. It was nice to have you back with us again, covering the DFARS, and thanks for the tidbit on what we could possibly expect in the future. Again, if anybody has questions, please contact Sandy directly. You've got her email address here. I believe that you're also on LinkedIn, and she's pretty easy to reach. In the event that anybody is watching or listening to this video on our YouTube channel, you're listening to the recording, give us a like, leave a comment. We would love to hear from you. And again, our YouTube channel is absolutely free. You can download over 750 government contracting webinars and learn more about us over there. We'll pick it up again on Friday with DFARS Part 227 at noon. If you can't make it, just sign up and we'll send you the recording once it's live. Thanks again, Sandy, and thanks to everyone who took time out of their day to join us.
Thank you. Have a good one.